Right, to recap, what I'm doing today is, for this particular one, number 3, adapting the polystyrene head to be able to create headpieces that fit a real human body. So you can see so far I've taken one of those very, very cheap polystyrene heads that you can easily get. The sad truth is that they're not actually the correct size for human bodies. So you saw me on the previous adaptation video where I was covering the polystyrene head with a layer of cling film to act as a barrier so I can reuse this over and over again, followed by shredded pieces of very, very cheap foil, all applied with the cheap children's craft PVA glue. In addition, I've added a sideline seam and drawn that on with a PVA. No, I haven't. I've drawn it on with a Sharpie over the masking tape line. And this layer of masking tape, which has been ripped into short pieces and layered on either side, the front of the head and the back of the head, is so that these layers that we're creating will eventually be cut down and separated. So none of my pieces are going over this line. They just straddle this line so that it should be easier later on to get it off. Just in case, I am prepared to take it off in quarters if necessary, but ideally it would be less joining later if I can manage just to take it off in the front of the head and the back of the head. So let's begin. So I have already got pre-shredded newspaper pieces. Newspaper is well, it's recycling, it's reusing, but also it blends really nicely. And the ripped edges of pieces of about 1-2 centimeters by about 6, 7, 8. You don't want them to be too long. You don't want creases to form because you want to get a smooth finish. So I just want to do one layer to start off with in the 2 halves. That way I'll be able to build up and add to jawline, increase the nose size in relation to the actual measurements that reflect what a real human head might be. So the easiest way to start is to actually apply some glue. I'm going to do the back of the head and just start this off. Really, you'll get the gist of the process and you won't need to see everything this way. So it is easier this way. You can start to form, put glue underneath, the PVA craft glue. At a later stage, I will include and incorporate the more expensive tight bond wood type glue. That will give more of a stronger waterproof finish. So I'm paying more attention at this point to the line on either side of this seam line, because this edge, I don't want this edge to be weak and shred away. So I might even have a doubled edge, like when I was doing the foil even, I was folding the very fine foam, I keep saying foam, foil. I might do the same with the newspaper too. So the newspaper will absorb, I must make a note of this, if it moves about, that's not helpful. The newspaper will absorb the PVA, obviously unlike the foil. I did have difficulty with the foil in the same situation here because it wouldn't absorb it, but that's the purpose. The foil is going to enable me to fill the core later with another material and the foil won't absorb it. So I might reduce the, you can see you can safely use your fingers to smooth it out because it is washable, it's not dangerous to your skin. If you do ever have any skin allergies though, and you might want to do a bit of a patch test first. I'm not going to fold that much over this time. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in there, and that way it will behave a little bit more for me. So a slight overlap from one piece to the next. Dip in, add a bit more glue. Try not to let it retract from the edge. Doesn't matter if it goes underneath a bit because you can always scalpel off any excess that will stop you easily taking the back section off later. So you can see I'm just turning over a little bit this time, and then it won't have to try and undo quite so much. It'll behave a little bit more. So adding glue as I go, it will increase the strength. I mentioned in the previous videos not to do too much at once. You do a layer at a time. You dry each layer as you go. You either leave it to dry naturally, or you can dry it, help it along a bit with the hairdryer. Just waft the hairdryer over it. Don't focus the heat in any one particular point, or else you are going to cause some distortion and in the layers. And the aim is to get a smooth, really strong layer, and this will harden once several layers have been applied. It will harden to form something as almost as strong as some woods. Paper mache was used quite a bit in the past. In the Victorian times, it became a thing to use to decorate furniture, but they also made items and objects out of paper mache. It was quite a bit of a trend. So I just glue that fold down so it will behave a little bit more before I place it to that side of the fold. Doesn't matter then. I can blend it round the rest of the head afterwards. So you can see I'm focusing on the seam at first that runs down the back of the head in this case. However, eventually I'll get round to doing the opposing seam and go over the front. Yeah, so in the Victorian times they used decoupage, and they would cut out of magazines, pictures, and they would decorate jewellery boxes, furniture. It became quite a bit like scrapbooking. So a lot of, I think that's where the, if you like, the craze, the hobby started. And a lot of, there are commercially available paper mache pulp and paper clay. There's all sorts of materials that emanate from using paper. However, my interest is partly to recycle things that would otherwise be thrown away or end up on landfill. So this, I'm very interested in using things that are already lying about, and saves money too. And it does the job just as effectively without spending more and more. So allow the glue to soak through, but it's important, you don't have to be as careful in other areas, but along the seam line you do, and of course around the face you want to make sure that this first layer and all subsequent layers around those areas, around the seam, around the face, actually is closely sticking and not adding creases and lumps and bumps where you don't want it to. But it can be a little bit quicker once we move away from the seam. So I'll move away from the seam for a little bit and just move around the back of the head. I don't need now to do the folded edge. I just need to make sure that there's a certain degree of overlap. You can see it doesn't want to go around this bend in the neck, so I can help it by using the handle to smooth it down, or I could rip it. But because newspaper is it absorbs damp, glue, things like that, it will, with a brush like this, you can make it blend a lot more effectively. Remember to, when you're laying the pieces, crisscross diagonals, that will strengthen the structure. Do not do it all in the same angle. That way you will get something that is less structurally sound later on. A bit more glue. Remembering that where I have already put the glue, actually, I don't want to let it dry too much, so I will go back to that seam in a minute. But just to demonstrate the size of the pieces and the technique, just single ply and forcing and pushing and smoothing with the brush, so that it, with the handle as well, so that it absorbs thoroughly and doesn't add any more unnecessary creases where you don't want them to be. You basically want to end up with a head that is going to be the correct proportions, the correct size, that you can take off this polystyrene stand, and that you can stick pins in, so that when you're mapping your design, you can hold it in place with strong pins. And it's possible that I could create a pattern from this if the layers weren't too thick. It's not my purpose at the minute. It's just to create a 3D model of the head. But I could take a pattern from this and then create a head from that pattern, say using EVA, because EVA rubber will bend and flex too and form into lots of different shapes, even shapes like this. That'll be interesting to try. I've not tried it, but I have faith. So again, there is glue already on the head where I'm placing it as a base layer, but I am going to carry on adding over to smooth over the top like a coat. So you're not, plenty of glue, but smoothed out, not lumpy. Okay, so the next layer would definitely be things like crisscrossing over this shape for strength. Trying to notice that there are no gaps in the newspaper. Obviously that will be a weakened structure. And you don't want that. So this is what we have so far. It's coming along. carry on with the seam around the head, around the top of the back of the head. So I'm using that Sharpie line, and the masking tape is definitely going to strengthen that line, using the brush to smooth it down. I had this when I was doing other masking tape pieces, or not masking tape, paper mache pieces, and the edges were relatively weak. So it's a mental note from learning from last time that that edge, especially when you want to try to rejoin it, is best if it's a little bit stronger, more so than the rest of it even. I mean, you can fix the edges, but this is just to try and avoid unnecessary mending of areas when it's not necessary at all. Okay. So moving around that seam, there's still glue that should be around there, holding it into place, because obviously it wants to move the minute you jab at it with a brush. Rotating the head. I'm using a tray under here, a very old tray. I'm in my front room actually. So the table, my work table, is covered with plastic bin bags to protect it so I don't have to clean too much. And my floor is protected by a kind of like dust sheet. I'm using an old sheet, old duvet cover. And anybody passing by on the street might well see and get a free demo if they stood by the window. Cheap at the price. Right. You might want to always approach things in stages. So I'm going to try and just map this, everything's sticking, map this back section in before stopping and moving on to the next area. So you can see how I'm overlapping. It's only just one layer at the minute. I wanted to put the first layer down. There's obviously paper is going to stick. The features that I want to build up on the front of the face will stick much more effectively to paper than it would to the foil. The foil's tending to want to peel away a little bit. So I see crease developing there. Smooth it down with the brush. Rotate the head. That's the good thing about doing the front and the back as well. That way you can hold the front knowing that that's dry. Smooth it down with your handle again. and folding it over that edge, placing that to the seam line. Lots of glue. I've noticed that some of the edges are dry, so run a layer of PVA over the top. Dab it down. Let's go over the back. Check where you've still got glue and if you need to add any more. You can use the brush or your fingernails to rotate it. See the glue pot that I'm using? That I think it held mushrooms. I try to reuse packaging. It is washable glue, so you can even reuse this glue container as often as I like. Little bit of a washing. Again, you might as well, it's going to end up on landfill. Some of these plastics can't be recycled anyway, so you might as well use them for a while longer. But try to avoid buying things in the first place using the plastic packaging. Okay, so nearly, not long to finish the back now, the back of the head. I'll get the front of the head mapped in, but leave the area with the face so that you can see how I'm going to build up the nose and the features, the jawline, because at the minute this face is possibly more akin to the size of a child really, and as such I'm not planning to make children's heads masks for this particular initial use. It's about creating adult size. In this case I'll make female masks, but I will be able to adapt it or create further ones using this technique by creating male masks as well. Right, I've gone over that line a little bit, so I want to pull that back and smooth it out using the brush handle again. Air bubbles, get the air bubbles out. Although I'm in my front room, it doesn't have to be a messy exercise if you approach it carefully. Like I have put the pre-ripped paper pieces in tubs covering the table. It doesn't have to be disastrous for your front room or wherever it is you're choosing to work. You've just got to be more organised. Careful about the other areas where you've already been gluing, because it might start to want to come up when you touch it. The plastic tray also helps to not enable you to stick to other areas, like the table or the plastic sheet. Again, smooth it out. So if I was going to make a pattern from this, I'd probably only want to put 2 layers of paper mache with no holes, no gaps. But I'm actually wanting to construct a head, take it off this mannequin and repiece it together once I've added to that. Okay. And the base of these polystyrene stands, the neck's quite short. So in fact, I would like a version that actually has shoulders, because some of the heavier headdresses, say if you're used in musicals or carnivals, the weight needs to be supported by the shoulders, not just the neck, or certainly not the head. So it's important to have an area, to have an extended area really, to balance the weight of the headpiece that's worn on the head. You don't want any back problems or neck problems due to the weight of the headpiece that the wearer might be wearing, the performer might be wearing. It reminds me actually of Keira Knightley in the film The Duchess, and she had to wear, it was set in Georgian times, and she had to wear some very heavy, very high, very tall wigs, and they weighed so much when she was hanging about waiting for each take. She had to lean her wig and head on a wall, on a handy wall nearby, because they were so heavy. That can't have been good for the neck at all. So I'm just layering some edge converse pieces along from the edge to strengthen the edge a little bit. I'll just check in a minute that I have noticed that that's coming away, so I'm going to squish it down with the brush handle. Get the last glue. I'm about to finish really. I think just have a little piece caught on the top. Are there any gaps? A quick look without touching it too much. Might as well pop it there. Go around with the brush handle, bit of smoothing. Oh, let's come away from that edge there. So grab the last of the glue, give it a nice quick coat and a chance to smooth down any stray edges that may be trying to, that haven't got enough glue absorbed into it, may be trying to peel away. There's just a little bit of a lump there. I can see a tiny gap here and there. So it's not to worry because I'm doing more than one layer anyway. And I can always cut the bits that are going over the base, because obviously that will lock and won't be able to be released later. Okay, we're about finished. So let's have a look. So we have the back of the head up to the Sharpie line with a folded edge of paper mache, one layer of crisscrossed pieces of paper mache. I will have to trim away whatever goes underneath, because of course that will lock into place, but I can easily do that when it's dry with a scalpel or even scissors at this stage. And that is that for the time being.